So just following on from what Paddy was talking about, about the rate of exploitation. Like what we were saying, exploitation can be measured, not just in terms of individual workers or individual factories, but in terms of national economies, you can look at the rate of exploitation. So here, this green line, that's the rate of exploitation in the US over the past historical period. So we start off in the late 40s, following Second World War. The rate of exploitation was very high. During the sort of what get called the golden period of a lot of US capitalism, there was a falling rate of exploitation. There was more trade union density, more concessions were given to the working class, really. With sort of the onset of neoliberalism, if you like, in the early 80s, it was a partial recovery. Maybe not as successful as it would have wanted to be. It wasn't the highs of the late 40s, but nevertheless, that was something they did to try to keep the system going, if you like, just further exploitation of the working class in the US. And just a more brutal example than the US would be South Africa. Because here we have rate of exploitation from the early 60s up until sort of 07, and you see that under the rule of the ANC and Nelson Mandela, because people will talk about we led a struggle against oppression and all that, which is to a point. If you want to talk about exploitation of the working class in South Africa, then the rate of exploitation of the working class in South Africa under the ANC was at a higher level than it was at any point under apartheid. It just goes to show it doesn't matter who is in charge. This is a point we always make about identity politics. We have to take things back to production. To get to the truth of the matter like this, and not just to see that victorize the ANC is a great thing which Stalinists not do. We need to look at it dialectically in that sense. That's already sort of covered on productive labour, so I'll skip this bit. I'll just add a bit. I think so if you look at a van driver where I used to work, they didn't produce a physical commodity. That's done by joiners and painters, but that's still a service which a company would be charged for. The clients of the company would be charged for. The drivers receive about £8 an hour of that. So we're creating surplus value on top of labour, and then putting it in a van and taking it to a building site. It's no really different from putting it on an assembly line and whatever. It's commodities in motion in that sense. So some people say transportation of commodities doesn't in itself create value, and a lot of times it might not, because you're just moving around existing value. But that same logic is never applied to coal miners who merely move coal from earth to the surface. Nobody would ever dare say that was unproductive labour. So the transportation of commodities definitely falls into a category of productive labour, even if you're physically producing something by your own hand in that sense. Marx also makes a point a schoolmaster is productive labour when, in addition to the labour in the heads of the scholars, he works like a horse to enrich the school proprietor. The latter has laid out his capital in a teaching factory instead of a sausage factory. Does not alter the relation, because if you're say a private school, you're producing the next generation of wage labourers, which is still productive labour in that sense. So just in terms of what Marx called the reserve army of labour, which is a term that you might see sometimes. It's basically that segment of the labour force which is held in reserve and is to be called into a workforce when a need for it arises. If there wasn't any reserve army of labour, it might make it difficult for new business to open or for temporary or emergency projects to be undertaken in an economy. So without a reserve army of labour, you'd have labour shortage, which would create upward pressure on wages, and it would increase union power. So I think of Britain in the post-war period. So that reserve army of labour needs to be doing something during the period that's held in reserve. And so it might be on welfare, maybe working in household. It's been a useful term for understanding women's relationship to a wider workforce. Because women were pulled into a workforce during World War II when men were away and were pushed out during the economic boom in the 60s and 70s. The women entered the workforce in large numbers, and there's a fear that they'll usually be the first ones fired in a recession, which has been case in the last 10 years with high density of women working in the public sector, with massive cuts to public sector jobs and that, austerity, which meant women have sort of had a larger burden in that sense. So women, young people, and the elderly may all be thought of as a reserve army of labour, since it's traditionally a state of the labour force. There's just a point that was made by Larry Elliott in The Guardian a few years back. He basically said, in terms of zero-hours contracts and all that, it's just another manifestation of reserve army of labour. People who don't have fixed conditions and sort of always on call for an employer, and he's talking about Sports Direct and all that sort of thing. The kind of places we're standing outside Leaflet today. That's what these workers are, essentially, reserve army of labour. People who may work 4 hours, 5 hours a week, and who may have no hours the next week, and people who live from one day to the next, essentially. It's not just for unemployed in that sense. And just a graphic example of what we mean. Here's Greece, and you can see the unemployment rate since sort of the onset of the crisis in 2008 shot up massively to around 25%. I'm not sure where it's at just now, but I think in terms of youth unemployment, it's actually closer to 50%. But at the same time, over the same sort of period, you see a massive drop in average monthly salaries. So you have, with the increase of available pool of workers to exploit, essentially, you have a fall in average wages, and there's a relationship between the two of them. We'll also talk about super exploitation of women, which ties into this about reserve army of labour. Because women have always historically been a source of cheap labour for big business. So if you look at the jute industry in Dundee, there's a lot of old mills around about this university. Women were drawn into the mills because their labour power was cheaper, and greater surplus value could be extracted from their labour. Children have also been used historically. I think my granny started working in mills when she was about 13 or 14. But not only this, since the reproduction of children, thus future workers takes place within the structure of the family unit, the women have always had to give up a significant portion of their free time in order to care for their children, do housework. That's essentially unpaid labour, foreign domestic slavery, if you like. Since capital was written, the social position of women has changed a lot. Technological advances have eased the burden of housework. More women have been drawn into the workforce. Development of birth control also gave women a greater degree of control over their own bodies, compared to Victorian times when the average woman had 7 children and all the rest of it. But you still have a lack of affordable childcare. A lot of women are still burdened by unpaid childcare. If you look at statistics in Canada, it shows that if you're a woman in a heterosexual marriage and you have children, on average you'll carry over 800 hours of unpaid childcare in a given year. And to be honest, it's probably in reality a lot more than 800 when you really break it down. I mean, most women spend more than 2 or 3 hours a day looking after kids. It's a full-time thing. If you want to look back at what James Connolly said, said the worker is a slave of capitalist society, you're wage slaves, but the female worker is doubly oppressed in that sense, is a slave of that slave. And I've included this diagram, which sort of shows capitalism needs workers in factories to produce profit. When the worker goes home, it's generally the women who are involved in the work, to get men back into get family back into the factories the next day. So ironing, doing baths, making teas, wiping arses, whatever it might be. But one point that we disagree with, like people like social reproduction theorists, if you want to call them that, sort of second wave feminist types, if you like, is we would say this sort of labour is unproductive labour, whereas they would say it is productive labour. And in discussion we maybe comment on to why that is. Women and working in the home are helping to reproduce labour power, but we're not actually producing a commodity in that sense. We can comment on this more in the discussion though. So just a point on primitive accumulation. I'll give you a minute because I've got notes on this that aren't on here. Here's just a quote from our former Canadian section. I suppose I stop clocks right twice a day. So if you just want to read that up while I go over the notes. Yeah, so in the first volume of Capital, Marx says that the so-called primitive accumulation, therefore, is nothing else than the historical process of divorcing the producer from the means of production. And what Marx means for this is, for an industrial revolution to be possible, it meant there had to be a fairly high degree of productive forces available. And that was only made possible through enclosure of land, highland clearances, forcing peasants into towns and cities to become the new proletariat, after being stripped of means of production. The material wealth in the first place, to make that possible, was coming from robbery of colonies, the building up of productive forces through the means of slavery, until slavery became an impediment to further expansion, if you like. C.L.R. James was a black revolutionary. Some people might be familiar with. He looked at the experience of slavery in the Caribbean as being part of a process of primitive accumulation, laying the basis for slave revolts in Haiti, which in effect represent a bourgeois revolution, like in France. Yeah, I've added this in because I think that came up with a few people. What Marx called simple and complex labour, or simple and compound labour, is something he referred to. I think Matty said that a minimum wage worker would produce about £1 of value per every 5 minutes as a work. So a worker produces £12 of value in an hour of work. But we're assuming there all types of labour create the same amount of value in the same time period. But economy isn't as straightforward as that. Economists who are opposed to Marx's labour theory are quick to point out here an obvious point that some forms of labour are more valuable than others. So how can you compare a labour time of an engineer or a doctor or a train driver to an unskilled labourer on an assembly line or a building site or what have you? You can't do it. You always got to know what about skilled labour. But Marx answered that riddle with his writings on simple and complex labour. Because what he showed was labour power is a commodity, like other commodities, and the values, the different sorts of labour differ considerably. So a general labour might be just £12 an hour, but a general labour doesn't require a whole lot of training compared with the training of a joiner over a course of an apprenticeship, or a doctor or an architect or whatever over many years at university. So that simple labour can be performed by the average member of a given population. But the labour of an educator at a university or a tech college, that finds its way into a value of labour power, just like with any commodity. So in this case, a certain set of skills, its value depends on the labour time producing it. So since more labour time is spent producing skilled labour, a higher value is attached to skilled labour because skilled labour produces more value in a shorter time period. But like Mark said, this is only people say this is a fatal flaw in Marx's labour theory of value, but Marx dealt with this. He says it's only an accounting issue, really, because you can reduce it all to simple labour, really. So you can look at 1 hour work for a carpenter is worth 2 hours in terms of value of a general labour, or a doctor would be worth 10 hours, and that sort of thing. If you get the drift. So I'll just move on. And what Matt was talking about, socially necessary labour time, because it hadn't been covered before, so just to sort of explain what we mean by that. Because a lot of bourgeois economists are quick to say that if the value of a commodity is determined by how much labour is required to produce it, it must follow that a labourer spends twice as long producing a commodity when his competition, he can expect twice the price it. Not the case. So Marx disagreed with that. He said that a commodity's value is determined by the amount of labour time that's socially necessary to produce it. So in basic terms, that would mean an average time. So if you take an example below, 4 painters, various skill levels, all give a quote for a job, an estimation of how long I'll take to complete the work, and we cannot expect sort of similar price condition to the average price on the market. So a labourer takes 24 hours will not be rewarded for taking 8 hours longer than the average. So that extra time is essentially wasted labour time for failing to produce in the time determined to be socially necessary. So a labourer who completes a job in 8 hours below the socially necessary labour time is able to make a super profit. And you might be thinking, well, this guy's made 220, so how's this guy with 140 making a super profit? He may have ended up with less for a job, but he's more productive. So this guy takes 3 days, you think about 8-hour shifts, whereas this guy does it in 1 day. So this guy has made £400 odd by the time this guy has made 220 by Wednesday, if you want to put it that way. So that's just sort of, if you look at that level. Trotsky deals with this in Marxism in our time, and one of the later things he wrote when he said that, I'll not read all this out, you can read it yourself, but a main point to take for this in terms of this discussion is where he says, cheers, divergence, it brings up to the point you're making, the divergence between the price and the values of commodities in individual instances there can be great divergences. But the sum of all prices is equal to the sum of all values. For in final reckoning, only the values that have been created by human labour are at the disposal of society, and prices cannot break for this limitation, even the monopoly prices of trusts where labour is created. Where labour has created no new value, even the Rockefeller there can get nothing. So I'll just a real life example of what I mean. So as I said, commodities value are prices determined by the amount of human labour power required to produce it. So if a capitalist is able to produce something below what is considered to be the average amount of labour time, they can make a super profit then by selling well above the intrinsic value of that commodity. So oil is probably the best example of this because it's very straightforward. Now, in Saudi Arabia, for example, well, it's very easy to extract oil. Stuff's practically flowing out of the ground. You know what I mean? It only costs $9 to produce and transport a barrel of oil in Saudi Arabia. Oil sells at $47 a barrel. And that means that Saudis can then make a super profit by selling it well above what's actually intrinsically worth in that sense. But in the North Sea, it costs $44 to produce and transport a barrel of oil, meaning a much smaller profit margin. So all that the super profits is made by capitalists in Saudi Arabia. That provides a material basis for Saudi oil monarchs and whatnot. They create wealth to then use that. The super profits to fund the exportation of basically reactionary Salafist ideology across the region, and the Iranian terror on the heads of working class groups throughout the Middle East. And so here's the exciting bit. A lot of the tendency for a rate of profit to fall. Assuming people talk about it a lot, but a lot of times people don't really get what it actually means. So if you were thinking if there was a number of capitalists involved in producing books, for example, it could be anything, but take books. Each of them has to put forward £10 constant capital for machinery and raw materials and whatever, £10 variable capital for wages each day, and they get £10 surplus value profit from exploitation of the workers each day. So finally, we each produce 10 books each day. So the total value produced by a particular capitalist each day is £30, 10 plus 10 plus 10. So that's a value of what we're producing. So there's 10 books. Value of £30. Each book has a value of £3. But if one of these capitalists invests in new technology, what happens? We're still paying £10 wages, we're still getting £10 surplus value, but now we're paying £20 instead of £10 in constant capital. But a new technique is a lot more productive than what we were doing before. So instead of producing 10 books a day, we're now producing 100 books each day. So the capitalist who innovated is producing £40 value each day instead of 30, but we've got 100 books now, no 10. So less value is embodied in each individual book. It's worth less in that sense. Each book is worth now just 40 pence instead of £3. So in the short term, a capitalist that made that investment wins it over rivals because it can flood the market, you can charge slightly less than £3 per book, maybe £2.60 or whatever to get that edge on the competition, but a lot more than 40p of value embodied there. But eventually, other capitalists will be forced to try to innovate, and pretty soon they too will be involved in price cutting to try to compete. So over time, the price of each book will fall somewhere around this value 40p with deflation and all the rest of it. In the process, some of the capitalists, presumably the ones who failed to innovate rapidly enough, and therefore can't cut prices, they'll be driven out of business. In terms of this process, example I always use, flat screen TVs. You think when big tellies first came out, were costing £3,000 or £4,000, ridiculous prices. But now, because all the competition between Samsung and whoever else, the prices fall massively. You can get flat screen TV for it's going to last a long time now, so value is going to fall massively in that sense. In terms of people innovating enough to keep up competition, you think of BlackBerry phones, which used to be massive when they first came out, and then it was totally overtaken by Apple and Android and whatever else. So just an example of what I mean. So you're gradually increasing investment in new machinery. It's constant capital, which Maddie talked about at the start, it's C here. So you go from 50 to 100 to 200 and so on. Like what we're talking about. But at the same time, you have the rate of profit falling over that time period. But why is it falling? It's important to remember that the only V part of that equation, the only wages, only the workers are producing new wealth, right? Machines don't produce new wealth, only give up their own wealth. So as less workers are involved in production, it's more machinery intensive. You do that to increase your profits in the short term, but in the long run, your profits fall because there's no value there that's being produced in that sense. There's no new value exploited from the working class in that sense. Falling rate of profit develops alongside basically an over-accumulation that means the production, that in turn leads to the market being flooded with commodities that won't find a buyer in that sense. So while crises in previous societies take the form of underproduction, like famine and what have you, where more than enough is produced to sustain a population, crises under capitalism take the form of overproduction. It's ridiculous as that might sound, where we produce too many commodities whose values cannot then be realised on the market. And that process means that businesses end up going bankrupt, and it means that production is sold off a fraction of their value. And what that means is capital is devalued. So that devaluation of capital, reduction, lowering its price, selling it off at higher sale prices, that's how capital's overcome crisis. It happened in the US following the Great Recession in 2007, but it wasn't done sufficiently to result in a sustained recovery for a capital system. Capitalism has really kept lumping along for the past decade or so through super exploitation of working class. That's one. In fact, there's a whole other range of counter tendencies, if you like. But yesterday we saw the stock market go down 900 points. I think he's they're running out of available options, if you like. You can't keep kicking the can down the road for that much longer. It will come to a head, and that will mean unleashing absolute. What's the term? Basically, going after the working class. Everything we have to try to keep the system lumping along. And so that process, it results in means of production becoming more concentrated in the hands of fewer capitalists. And as that process of crisis, it results in the formation of monopolies in that sense. So that's why in the 70s and 80s, militant, our predecessors would have called for the nationalisation of the top 250 companies. As us Socialist Party, we never call for nationalisation of the top 150 companies. That's not a rightward step or whatever. That's not saying needing less nationalisation. That's just recognising the fact that there has been a concentration of capital into fewer hands. So I'll just quickly on imperialism. So within a given nation state, capitalism can only expand so far, and capitalists are forced to export enormous amounts of capital abroad to develop economies where there are higher rates of profit. If we look at an example of NAFTA in America, that's allowing business to move south to Latin America where the rate of profit is higher, and allowing the US capitalists to increase their profits. But that means, in response to that, you've seen the rise of people like Trump and what have you, workers in places like the Rust Belt, look for an alternative to people like the Clintons who basically organised NAFTA. What Trump is a genuine alternative. It shows the desperation for political alternative to and what have you. No, but in terms of NAFTA, that's meant brutal conditions for the working class in Latin America, but it's also meant to develop left forces over a period right across the continent. How effective those left forces have been, we can debate that in the discussion. In terms of the neo-colonial world, I want to make a quick point on this because I've misunderstood this in the past. A common debate among Marxists is which section of the working class is exploited more. Like I said, you can't measure exploitation. Working class in advanced capitalist countries or in the neo-colonial world, often could be in the global south or whatever, third world. A lot of these terms may give them Maoists and other variants, Stalinists. Because despite the brutal conditions of working in the neo-colonial world, the rate of exploitation in Britain or the US is still higher. There's a higher level of production in advanced capitalist countries. Allows for workers to reproduce the value of their labour power in a shorter period of time. So despite a higher rate of profit in the neo-colonial world, this is important to remember, with a higher rate of profit, there's a lower rate of surplus value, a lower rate of exploitation. Marx sets out why this is the case in Capital Volume 3, and this will be about the most technical I'll get before I start summing up. So this is the quote here. It's particularly important in comparing rates of profit in different countries. Let us assume that the rate of surplus value in one European country is 100%. So a labourer works half of the working day for himself and the other half for his employer. And like I said, that's pretty standard in a country like Britain. I think a worker in Britain produces about £52,000 per year on average and gets about 26,000 in terms of average wage as a skilled worker. He goes on, let us further assume that the rate of profit in an Asian country is 25%. So a labourer works 4/5 of the day for himself and 1/5 for his employer. And he goes on, but basically says here, a rate of profit in the European country is 16%. I'm sorry. Yeah, so the rate of profit in the European country is 16%, whereas in the Asian country it's 21%. But if you look at S over V, the rate of exploitation, so here the 21 over 84, I think he said it was 1/5, is it? So it's 20%, whereas in the European country it's 100%. So the rate of exploitation is higher in the European country because workers are more productive, because they have more advanced technique or whatever, if you want to put it that way. And he goes on to say, certain people would draw the opposite conclusion. Maoists and Stalinists and third worldists and various variants of Mandelites do draw that wrong conclusion. In the pamphlet actually I made that wrong conclusion, is something I'll correct later on when I get a chance. So in terms of what we are talking about all the time, the transitional program, how does this relate to what we're talking about? So these tendencies towards crises place barriers on capitalist accumulation. Investment closely tracks profitability in that sense. So a type of massive investment that we need, housing and renewable energy, health, jobs, and all these other essentials of life is held back by these tendencies within capitalism. We support a lot of policies promoted by people like Jeremy Corbyn and other reformers, if you like, for investment in jobs, whatever. But we support any measures that improve the living standards of working class people. But the difference between Marxists and reformists is the transitional approach, because we recognise, based on a diagram about the working day I was talking about, whatever bosses give with the one hand, they'll always try to take it back with the other. So that's why we call for all major industry, commerce, banks, to be nationalised under democratic working class control and management. So a working class are then in control of how investment is directed and essentially become the new ruling class. So how does this relate to the activity we do? How does this relate to what we did the day when we were going out and targeting exploitative employers? I think that's pretty obvious. Marxist ideas can often seem to be an academic exercise, a little bearing on the day-to-day lives of working class people. But we are organised into a revolutionary party because we recognise that workers are exploited by the bosses who seek to drive down our living standards to extract greater amounts of surplus value out of us. And by recognising that capitalism exists to extract surplus value from workers, and the historical purpose of capitalism is the expansion of value and the development of means of production, That shows that the working class are the most powerful force in society, because we can stop the system from functioning basically by putting our hands in our pocket and no doing the work and no producing a value. So it shows the importance of industrial action, explains why we support and why we agitate for strikes, underlines our campaign for coordinated strike action in the public and private sector against austerity, because strike action in the private sector hits the bosses of ours most, it hits them in their profits. And that's why CWI, now we refounded CWI, throughout its history, defending the notion of organised working class are the only force that can lead a successful socialist revolution which would abolish capitalism and pave the way for the abolition of exploitation. All the petty bourgeois sects, a lot of them claiming to be Trotskyists, whether that's SWP or various Mandalay groups over years, basically turn away from the working class. They didn't see the working class as an agent, a change in society, because they didn't understand fundamentally this role of working class play in production and why that is so central. So we look to other forces to lead socialist revolution, whether that be peasant armies or student groups or don't know, whatever weird ed poll thing is popular this week. Anything but the working class, basically, these groups will turn towards and make the main thing about activity. Whereas what we're trying to do is develop an industrial cadre, and we go in the factories and organise workers and raise the transitional programme in that sense. So basically, what's socialism got to do with this? When we talk about socialism, what do we mean? The point of socialism is about abolishing exploitation. Things aren't produced under capitalism unless there's a sufficiently high rate of profit there for your investment. But we need to make profit that will come into the equation under socialism. Under a planned socialist economy, material wealth, factories, land, banks, whatever, a capitalist class, after being expropriated from them, after being expropriated by expropriators in that sense, because we were expropriated during the process of economic accumulation, we were forcing of peasants walking into the towns to become the new working class. That was expropriation. And when Marx talks about expropriating expropriators, that's what he's talking about in that sense. So after that's expropriated from that would be put to use to provide for social need. And the main concern would then be that if the means of production were owned and controlled by the working class, how could these resources be put to use to provide a decent standard of living for everyone on the planet? In short, we'll go back to what we talked about at the start, the production of use values and exchange values, producing things for direct use of other people and no for exchange on the market to make profit in that sense. Now, if you look at here, this is the limit of Soviet 100 years ago this year, whereas workers took over a bakery in Limerick in Ireland, and they took over a city really, but this is one part of it above the bakery, we make bread, not profits, because workers starving, couldn't afford to eat. Well, we'll take over, we'll produce, we'll organise distribution, where profit didn't come into it. So in that sense, we're producing for use, so we're not producing for exchange in that sense. When we talk about production use values or what socialism, which might give, that's what we mean, doing away with exchange value, doing away with commodity production in that sense. So that's the end of my notes. I just wanted a couple of things I wanted to finish on, just in terms of what this means for us. And just something. Yeah, so basically to sum up, people have debated and discussed what Capital Volume 1 is really all about for 150 odd years now. And I think a lot of discussions go on in academia about Marx's work are important. We should look to that. We shouldn't just look at that, because ultimately we should see Capital and Marx's economic writings, writings by Trotsky and Lenin, who for us is a guide to action. No something just sit about reading for the sake of it. It should inform discussions about tactics and the programme. Now, these discussions about exploitation don't just exist in the abstract, but describe a real material situation of our lives, where all the oppressive social relations exposed. We shouldn't stand on street corners preaching about transformation of money into capital and all the rest of it. But when we go out and engage with workers, it is our duty to make them understand their importance to the system, if you like. You always come up against people who will be like, oh well, we need the bosses, what can you do about it? Everyone wouldn't have a job. A slogan that came out of France in 1968 was that the boss needs you, you don't need the boss, and that's very true. Bosses are essentially parasites in that sense. Now, I think we are probably understand that here. There's no yet a widespread understanding of that in the general society. People don't like their boss sometimes, but I still think the bosses get hired for hard work, ingenuity, and all the rest of it. You can't just lecture someone and expect them to just change their position on that. I think you need to demonstrate that in practice to be the case and change people's material conditions. And when workers come on a strike, the machines stop turning and capital ceases to expand, workers are then presented with a different reality. It becomes clear to them that their people have produced the wealth. They can quite easily run the factories themselves and hastily creaming off surplus value for himself, and that's when workers feel a real power. What I found in my old work where I was at the shop steward, young workers soak up these ideas. When I was recruiting apprentices and that to a union, it was not in every case, but in some cases that was done on the basis of a discussion with those apprentices about how their apprentice rates are lower, even though sometimes they're producing more work than the time served guys, and how that allows for the boss to extract greater levels of profit out of them to line their own pockets. And I built the union in work on that basis. Basically, when I started working in that factory, it was like a lot of what. It was around the time I started reading all this stuff by Marx. It's like what I'd been reading about was just brought to life in front of us, and that's because what Marx is talking about, he's talking about labour in the abstract. He's not talking about just one specific job, and he's talking about common features to capitalism as a whole in that sense. So I felt like I was a stage play, a capital, when I went into my work. If you get what I mean, and all these processes are just brought to life. You know what I mean? Anything I didn't understand just became that much clearer, and that's what happens when you enter into the workplace. So basically, through this, it doesn't matter whether you're a shop fitter in Britain, or if you're a sweatshop worker in China, you're a migrant worker in the US, and that commonality between all of us is we're all forced to sell our labour power in exchange for a wage, and we're thus forced to sell ourselves off bit by bit as a commodity, sacrificing our free time, but physical and mental health in the process. When people talk about oppressors and oppressed in such loose terms nowadays, these words have essentially become meaningless. At this stage, you're basically empty phrases peddled by petty bourgeois sectarians and academics to keep working class people divided. A real divide in society is a class divide, and both workers and capitalists can fall into any identity group you can think of. Marx knew that capitalist mode of production came into being absolutely dripping in blood through colonialism, enslavement, genocide, land grab, through that created class of dispossessed people who become the new proletariat. But a massive concentration of capitalists taking place since Marx's time. Class lines have never been clearer. The working class in countries like Venezuela, Catalonia are stepping onto the scene of history. Marx spent a lot of time in libraries, whatever, writing books. For that, he was attacked by his opponents around the socialist movement who said he was just an armchair revolutionary, just wanted to sit around reading theory. Marx said he had to get the theory right, because if he didn't get the theory right, and he was building on sand. First International had to be built on solid basis, and that's why most of Marx's political energy, if you like, was put into building the First International, and then split in various sectarians to wreck First International later on, and re-establishing the International on healthier grounds after his death. Marx understood that he had to build an International to put these ideas into practice, and that system that Marx was describing had to be destroyed by a working class, essentially. And the best way we can commemorate publication of Capital Volume 1 is to double our efforts, to fight, to rebuild. We had a re-foundation conference in London a few weeks ago. Let's go forward, build it international into a mass international for all militant workers that are prepared to struggle and fight for socialism. Let's make socialism, abolition of production for profit a reality in our lifetime.